Stukes, is that you?
Yes, ma'am.
Sir, would you introduce yourself to the board? Tell us your name and your DOC number.
My name is Romallis Stukes, 121416.
All right, it's breaking up a little bit. Can you hear us okay? Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am. We can hear you.
Okay. So, Mr. Stukes, I'm going to read some identifying information into the record, ask you to confirm it, and then I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Marabella, who is seated to my right. Your case has been assigned to him, so he'll take the lead on the interview process. We also have some folks here who are here in support by Zoom. We have your sister, Miss Patricia Stukes. She's going to speak on your behalf at the appropriate time. And your brother, Benny Stukes, is also observing, but is here in support. So, Mr. Stukes, you are Romallis Stukes. Your DOC number is 121468. You've submitted an application for clemency seeking a commutation of your sentence. You were sentenced in 1986 for 2 counts of malfeasance in office. You received, 18 months on each count to run concurrently. You were sentenced in 1988 to a life sentence for aggravated rape conviction. Mr. Stukes, is that information correct?
Will be only 1 count of malfeasance.
It's 2 counts in our record. Yeah, it occurred at the same time, but it is 2 counts. We'll go over that in just a moment. Mr. Marabella.
Mr. Stukes, my name is Tony Marabella. Good afternoon. Your case was assigned to me, so I'll begin the interview process, okay? How old are you, Mr. Stukes?
70 years old.
How long have you been in prison?
Just under 35 years, or 2 months.
Let's talk a little bit about your education. How far did you go in school?
Graduated high school, got a couple of years of college through the police department.
Okay. And when did you start the police department? How old were you?
1973.
You started in 73. So how old would you have been then? 21, 22, something like that?
21.
21 years old? How long were you a police officer?
Approximately 13 years.
Now, when you indicated that it was 1 malfeasance charge, but it was actually 2 separate counts. You pled guilty at the same time to both of them, and your time was run together. You were given probation, and then it got revoked. You remember that?
Yes, I do.
Now, did that result in your being dismissed from the police department?
Yes.
So when you pled guilty, you were dismissed from the police department?
I was dismissed upon that arrest and the charge itself.
Upon the arrest, okay. Now let's talk a little bit about those 2 offenses. It's my understanding that you pled basically an offer type plea. You pled, you said I didn't do it, but I'm going to take my lumps. Is that basically what you did?
Basically, yes.
So tell me what happened. Why did you get accused of this? Let's talk about the first one. The first one involved, as I understand it, y'all were in a restaurant at Wendy's. Somebody was saying something you didn't like. The next thing you know, you and 2 other officers pulled them over, and one of them didn't have the guy didn't have a driver's license, and y'all were bringing him. You were going to arrest him, put him in the car. He says he got tased. Tell me what happened. Tell me why that isn't so.
We were in a restaurant at Wendy's on Reed Road out in New Orleans East. We were already there eating. And these people, whoever they were, they came in and seated in the restaurant. Well, while we're sitting at the table talking, and this guy started acting out. He didn't only say anything. He was talking a while and got up and gesturing as if though he was going to do something. I don't know, like fight or whatever. And we looked over at him and played it off. And people pulling at him, people at his table pulling at him, telling him, sit down or whatever, cut it out, blah, blah, blah. And I mentioned to my partner, I said, what's up with this guy? Let's hurry up and get out of here. Well, they left before us. Little did we know, because traffic is usually kind of heavy in that area. When we left out, they were just getting out the driveway. When they pull out, we had an opening, we pull out. We're about a car or two behind them. And he just gets out of the car in the midst of traffic while we're waiting at a light. Gets out of the car and he's gesturing, and there the people pulling him back, and all, he gets back in the car. That continued until we got up to the I-10. We're going to go westbound. When we moved over to the lane to go westbound, he had moved over to the left in the same lane. He's continuously looking back as if there was something about us that's bothering him, whatever. We pulled him over on the shoulder of the road, tried to talk to him. And found out he had no driver's license. And he says, you're all always bothering people, or this and harass the family use. I said, man, we're not even arrested. We're detectives, we're detectives. I tried to get the 7th District to come over, the uniform team to come over. They were tied up. Same guy said he didn't have a license. I said, well, look, and he's getting kind of around a bunch of, I'll do this, I'll do that. Let's put him in the cup. Cuffs on, put him in the cup. Break down foolishness. There was like 3 or 4 women that was with him. I said, anybody had a driver's license who can drive this car? The lady said, yeah, I do. I'm about to give her the keys. She said, but they're at home. I can't give you the car keys to drive a car. You don't have a license. Anyway, we said, let's get somebody over here. Can you go to that phone over there? We'll get somebody.
Well, tell me about the tasing. It's my understanding you denied ever tasing the guy. Did you tase him?
I did not. I did not.
Who tased him?
Nobody. He said.
How do you account for the fact that he went to the hospital and the hospital records indicate that he had burn marks just like a tase?
What happened was he said that he got tased. When he got to the lockup, he was asked, are you sick, ill, injured, whatever, like they always do? He said no. It wasn't until much later on I found out that they told me he went to the hospital and complained about being tased. The information he gave to the officers, that the ID people, whoever it was, said that his explanation was, I'm sitting directly in front of him.
All right, well, let's talk about the other incident.
Okay.
Second incident of the tasing at the club. There was a guy who came in without paying. You remember that? No? Yes? There were 2 incidents of malfeasance. The second instance of malfeasance was you were at a club, someone came into a club without paying the admission, and he alleged you tased him. And you pled guilty to both of those charges. So none of that happened? What happened on the second time? Those are 2 separate things.
I don't remember that one. I remember one incident at the club, and I don't know if, I think he went to internal affairs, but he was in there because he didn't pay. He got mad because we were serving free red beans and they had no more.
Mr. Stukes, you pled guilty to 2 separate counts of malfeasance. You pled at the same time and your sentence ran concurrent, but you pled to 2 different instances that you tell me are lies, okay?
No.
Now, whoa. Let me finish. We're now going to get to what I consider the real issue here. You are also convicted of rape. You deny that.
Yep.
So tell me about that. Tell me it is alleged and you were convicted of aggravated rape of your daughter. It's also alleged that you molested your son. And it's also alleged that you attempted to rape your wife's little sister. You deny all of those things. So tell me about that. I'm very concerned about letting a convicted sex offender out on the streets who denies that he's done anything when we have ample evidence in the record to show that you did. So tell me what you did.
Those incidents, when I was at home, I'm trying to get to work. It was my week to keep the kids. I had them
Mr.
over.
Stukes, did you commit these crimes or not? You telling me no?
I did not commit those crimes. They were home.
Yet you were convicted by a jury of aggravated rape. Am I right?
Based upon what my daughter said.
Okay. And you know, we have a letter. Your son supports you. He supports your getting out because he loves you and he's forgiven you. He has never said, he didn't do me anything. He said, I forgive him for what he did. Now you're telling me that you didn't do anything, but you're asking me to let you out. And I'm very concerned about letting out a person who's been convicted of a sex offense who, number one, denies anything about that. There are 3 separate occasions, ample evidence in the record to show that you've done it, and then you're denying these other 2 malfeasance charges. Again, I'm not so much concerned about those malfeasance charges, but I'm seeing a pattern of you're just refusing to accept the consequences of what you've done. So tell me why I'm wrong about that.
All the time period with this supposed to be rape and all that happened, I wasn't even home. They put it on a Saturday night when my oldest girl, they said, and my son went to a slumber party. When it was the other way around, it was the youngest girl and the girl over her that went to the slumber party. And it didn't happen because my youngest daughter, who's supposed to be the victim of rape, was the one that lied, and it was not a slumber party. The neighbor came and told me. I said, well, let me get
So
home.
your youngest daughter lied. Now, did your wife lie when she said you tried to rape her little sister and you told her you were drunk when you did it? Now tell me about that offense. That didn't happen either?
That offense, I don't know where that come out of the blue because of the fact that that same person that they claimed that I was supposed to.
Let me stop you. Let me stop you. So you deny ever getting in the bed with your sister, your wife's younger sister, drunk. You're saying that never happened. That's a lie.
I don't remember that. What I remember is being away.
Well, what do you think you don't remember it? Did it happen?
I don't think it happened. Because if that were the truth, we went to their house in Miami and stayed overnight. My wife left me and my kids.
Mr. Stukes, I'm not going to sit here and retry everything with you. I'm just trying to find out if I'm willing to take a risk on you being on the streets. That's what I'm here to figure out. So your son was lying too back then, even though today he supports you getting out, but forgives you for what you did. He lied back then too.
I don't know what the forgiveness part is. He told me out of his own mouth, he says, I don't blame you for leaving, Dad. I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry for thinking otherwise. And I'm like, well, I didn't make this up. I didn't never leave. I was always available. My wife took the kids away from me where I didn't see them. I would spend more time away from my family and my children than I spent at home. Everybody who knew me knew that I worked strange and long hours. It was very rarely home.
Mr. Stukes, tell me what you learned. You took all 4 phases of sex offender treatment, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
Tell me what you learned in sex offender treatment.
Well, there's a lot to learn in it, and that is you can have relapses. Where
Tell me
people
what you learned that affects you personally. What about the sex offender program that you took that has helped you be a better person since you've been in? Give me some things that you learned in that program that's going to make you a better man and make me less worried about you doing something like this again.
Well, I'll never do anything because of the fact that I'm a person that when combined in a situation of any kind, I'll more or less become an introvert. I don't argue. I don't like to fuss and fight with people. I'm not going to get involved in situations.
To answer my question about what you learned in the sex offender treatment program?
Yes.
Tell me.
My answer is that you can learn a lot of things. And for instance, if you overplay on your emotions and your feelings, if you have something about you that draws you people of the opposite sex or whatever the case may be, you can control all that stuff, man. I've been in prison 35 years. I don't even entertain that. You know, when other people are watching shows on TV that has some kind of rating to it, I'm not interested in that. I like boats and I like things of that nature. But when you look at people that do things like that, I've experienced that with dealing with people on the street. You know, folks say, well, he has a lot of what do you call them, smut magazines. That guy may not be a sex offender, but he has some proclivities to do something that he shouldn't be doing. I don't collect any of that stuff. I've learned that, you know, if you stay away from all of that, not entertain that, it's like smoking and drinking. I don't smoke and I don't drink.
Have you ever drank?
I've had a drink in the past, many, many years ago.
How about drugs?
I don't do drugs.
You ever done
Yes, sir,
drugs?
against drugs. Once or twice in my life.
How about your drinking? You said you drank years ago. You've been in prison for many, many years. Were you
Yes.
drinking back then when all of these things you were accused of doing?
No.
Your wife
I have one
suggests at some point, when you got in bed, when she says you got in bed with your sister-in-law, you were drunk. Is that true?
I can't say that's true at all because I don't know what she
Oh,
invented.
were you drinking a lot back then?
No. My wife and I were going through some serious problems with the divorce. And more stuff was coming out of the woodwork than I knew about. I was accused of doing things when I wasn't even in town.
Mr. Stukes, you took Thinking for a Change. What did you learn in Thinking for a Change? You've taken some excellent programs. You've taken
Yeah.
Thinking for a Change, Cage Your Rage. You've taken many faith-based programs. You belong to a number of clubs. Can you still hear me? You kind of went away on our screen over here.
I can hear
Can you
you.
hear me? Can you still see
Sure.
me?
I can see
Okay.
you.
So tell me what some of the programs, what you believe to be some of the best programs that you've taken.
Alternatives to Violence was kind of like based on a course that I took with the FBI called Crisis Intervention. That was before I came here. And some of the other clubs were, I can't think of the name of them offhand, but it's Thinking for Change and what have you. These things give you tools to work with if you've never been in that area of helping to make decisions in situations that may become a little bit outlandish or powerful. You know, I've had a lot of guys over in the unit where I am that they get into situations and I've been able to talk to them without getting them written up or locked up or them getting in fights. And you can resolve things a lot easier by using a little diplomacy. And I've learned a lot of that from those programs and other programs that I've been through.
Let me ask you this. I mean, you've indicated that for whatever reason, your young daughter wasn't telling the truth, your son wasn't, that's all lies. What do you think, how do you think they feel or what they've gone through throughout their life, remembering all of these things? What if anything, what do you think about them? What effect has this had on them?
As far as my son is concerned, I don't know what effect it has on him because he doesn't indicate anything. He just, every time we talk, he's like, Dad, I really love you, man. I miss you, this, that, and that. I said, I miss you too. And he recalls things such as us going fishing, fixing things at home together, cutting grass together, and what have you. My daughter that's involved, supposed to be involved, I haven't seen her in God knows when. But I get messages from my son or someone else that would say, if your daughter saying that she missed you, blah, 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 and I don't have any contact with her. She went down that road that I was trying to prevent, and that was that drug road that her mother took her on.
Mr. Stukes, done some positive things. You're a Marine Corps veteran. You've taken some good programs. You've been in prison over 35 years. You've got a good disciplinary record. But I'm very, very concerned about your denial and the fact that you were convicted of aggravated rape. So tell me, help alleviate my concerns. Tell me why I should not be concerned about voting to grant you a pardon based upon the fact that I've got evidence. A jury convicted you of aggravated rape. You pled guilty to 2 counts of malfeasance, yet you deny all of those things. So tell me why I should feel comfortable voting to grant you a pardon.
Sir, I don't know how to explain it to you, but I have no reason to be involved in anything like that. I have a long history of doing what is right here on the street and everywhere else. These things that basically this part of my life, or that part of my life, were all based on a marriage going wrong. I fought to get my kids when I was supposed to be going to child mediated. I'm stopped from going there to be arrested. Things that just keep cropping up for no reason. She had a vendetta to get me. Different people have told me since I've been in here, other inmates I've met that knew her, not me, and told me that this was all a setup. I can't go on that because I don't have a deposition from anybody saying such. But when I look back in hindsight, things was happening in my life for a reason when I wasn't even around. I'm a guy that worked details, special assignments, worked my regular hours, took care of my kids, took care of my home. I built a home when I had somebody that didn't want one. Why? Trying to hold a marriage together. Work long hours, trying to hold a marriage together. Put money into the house, trying to hold a marriage together. That was being taken to use for drugs and everything else. I was confronted by people that were dealing her drugs and asked for plenty of money that I didn't have. I don't know which way to go. Her sister, whatever her name was, the younger sister, we went to that house in Miami. If I was accused of trying to do or something, why would I go to a house? Why would she invite me?
Mr. Stukes, you're not answering my question, at least satisfactory to me, but I hear what you're saying. I'm going to ask Warden Goodwin, can you tell us a little bit about Mr. Stukes?
Yes, sir, Mr. Marabella. I've known Romallis Stukes since 1988. He's been here at this institution for almost 34 years. As you noted, he has an excellent conduct record. I think he's had 2 write-ups during the entire 34 years. The last one was 1990 something. I mean, he's been a model prisoner. He serves on our offender welfare committee, working on behalf of the other inmates here. He is a facilitator in our sex offender program for our N5 protected custody offenders. He's been involved, as you mentioned, in numerous self-help programs. Even though he has a life sentence and can't earn any good time, he still participates. And as you know by the comments by the mental health professional, Mr. Hayden, he's always available to help facilitate. He's always glad to be of assistance in that program. So I've known Romallis Stukes for, like I said, 34 years, and I've always found to be an honest individual, somebody that's always straightforward, and you know, and I don't think he's ever told me anything over those years that wasn't true, or tried to run a game or something like that to get something that he shouldn't have. I mean, he's always been very straightforward, very honest, and very a man of good integrity within this institution. He has an excellent record here, and you know, I know him from the 34 years he's been here, Mr. Marabella, and he's been a model prisoner and a good citizen of David Wade Correctional Center.
Thank you very much, Warden Goodwin.
Yes, sir.
I don't see any other questions. So let me ask Ms. Patricia Stukes. We'd like to hear your remarks, please.
Hi, my name is Patricia Stukes, and this is my big brother. This situation is very, very difficult because for the last 35 years, my brother has maintained his innocence. He's between a rock and a hard place, because if he doesn't acknowledge that he did this, then it looks like he has not repented. And if he does acknowledge that he did this, then he denies what his truth is. So I can only say to you that my brother is 14 and a half years older than me. He raised me. He raised me and he raised my younger brother, Benny. Never an incident. He has a daughter who is 50 years old. He raised her. Never had any kind of incident. Today, I'm Dr. Stukes and I study sociology. Deviance is part of my work. I wanted to understand what I understood about sex offenders is that normally they have a proclivity and that it's very specific and that it is not something that's errant and jumps up out of nowhere after all of this time. My brother has always been a worker. He was the one who held my mom down after my father left, after his father left. He's my big brother. We continue to communicate. He is loving, he is caring, he's got an incredible sense of humor. He's just an overall good person. And I think the most important thing I can say is his son, Roro, loves him dearly. He may ask for forgiveness, but please understand that these were children who were caught in the middle of a situation that went very bad. I went to the Army because my brother went to the Army. Both of my older brothers went to the Army. That's why I went to the Army, because I wanted to do what they did. Those were the only role models I had aside from my nursing mother. It's important to understand that Freddie's wife, when I came home from Germany after being in the service for 3 years overseas, the very first thing she did was took me out. And the first place she went to was a drug place. I didn't know any better then because I was just happy to be with family and really thought she was my sister, really thought that's how she would treat me. So when all of this happened, a number of accidents had happened with her. And my mother kept saying to Freddie, be careful. She wouldn't let him see the children. And finally, one Friday afternoon, she allowed the child to go to his home. By that Monday, he was accused of rape. I've never seen or heard of any sex offenders who have those kinds of errant proclivities that's all over the place. I don't, at this point, believe that it happened. I believe that it's a string of really unfortunate incidents, and that my brother, being a God-fearing man, is very interested in understanding what he avoided by being in prison, because that's the attitude he's taken about it, that I don't know exactly what I did to deserve this, but clearly I'm here for a reason, and I'm going to be as useful as I can be in this situation. He doesn't cry, he doesn't whine, he has never once ever talked about how horrible it is for him to be accused and not be guilty. So at this point, as I say, I don't think he's a threat to anyone. I think the warden is right. He is one of the most honest people I've ever known, and he has been through a hell of a lot. I'm hoping that you will understand that he's between a rock and a hard place in terms of his innocence, because either way, it looks horrible, and there's nothing he can do about it. There's nothing I can do about it, nothing our family can do about it. He's lost his father, he's lost his older brother, he's now lost his mother, he lost his ex-wife, all of that while serving in prison. So I would like you to just take this into consideration. What does someone do who's been convicted of a crime that's so heinous and yet know he's innocent? What can he possibly say to you? He could lie and say, I'm a changed man, but I think if he was a changed man, it's changed for reasons that have absolutely nothing to do with rape. I think he recognizes the value of his family now more than he did before, because before he worked all the time, constantly. And my mother used to say, you don't spend time with your family. You need to spend time with your family. So I think if anything, that's one of the big lessons he's learned. but I really do hope you consider his situation. He is been here for 35 years. What more price can he pay? He's made amends to everyone he loves because he's there, not because he did something horrible. So I get why you think he's just denying everything. But if you were to sit and talk with him for any period of time, which I have, it becomes very clear that he is between a rock and a hard place and claiming his innocence.
Ma'am, thank you very much. We appreciate your comments. Mr. Stukes, is there a statement you'd like to make to the board?
I can only hope that the board will take into consideration what my sister has said, which is true. I think in my past, I've overworked and maybe not given enough attention to personal things. I took things for granted that everything was okay when it wasn't. I don't know. I protect the guys I work with when situations happen. There too, maybe I was wrong for that. You know, just like I do here with guys that's in the unit with me, when things come up, I try my best to stop situations or to do something opposite that, whereas no one gets right up, no one gets locked up, no one gets hurt, there's no fights. And I don't know, it's like putting your head up against the wall. But I'm not going to stop trying to stop things that can go south. So I appreciate what the board can do for me.
I think we're ready to vote. We'll start with Mr. Marabella. Yes, sir.
Before y'all vote, can I say one other thing? I was hoping Romallis would bring it up, but he didn't. You know, he's been here 34 years. And he's gone through the normal aging process. He's not a young man anymore. He's 70 years old. And he's got some health issues and quite a few mobility issues. And he may want to touch on those, he may not, but I just wanted to bring that to the board's attention. He is a 70-year-old individual that's confined to a wheelchair most of the day. He's got very limited mobility issues. And I just wanted to bring that up. I thought Stukes would bring it up, but he didn't. So I just wanted to make you all aware of that before you vote.
Thank you, Warden. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Stukes, your case may be one of the most difficult cases I've had to decide. I've been on this board in 2.5 years. Done a lot of positive things in your life. You're a policeman, you're a Marine Corps veteran. You've taken a lot of good programs while you've been in prison. The warden has spoken as highly of you as I've heard him speak of anyone else. You've taken a lot of excellent programs. You're classified as a low risk. All of those things are very positive and very much in your favor. Mr. Stukes, when I took this job, I took an oath to try to do what I thought was the right thing to do. And I'm going to tell you, I've got some real issues here. Because, as I told you earlier, malfeasance charges aren't that big a deal to me, except that you continue to deny them. I believe they occurred, you pled guilty to them, but yet you still say they didn't happen. You deny doing anything sexually with your daughter, yet a judge found you guilty, listening to all of the evidence, found you guilty of aggravated rape. Your son has forgiven you for what you've done. You know, I was expecting you to say, I don't have a problem with your continuing to claim your innocence, even if you go to trial, but you pled guilty to the malfeasance charge. I was hoping that you would say at least to your young daughter, she was a victim. Maybe I didn't do what I said I did. They say I did, but her mother victimized her. I feel sorry for her. She must have had a horrible life as a result, but you didn't say any of those things. And that bothers me. And that very much concerns me. And I have a real problem. I really do. There are so many things on paper that say I should vote perhaps to grant your pardon. But there are other sides that I say I have a real problem based upon the type of offense this is. Based upon your interview today and your discussions here today, in spite of all of you, my vote today is going to be to deny. Good luck to you. I'm just one vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mirabella. Mr. Freeman?
I also listened very closely to what Warden Gooden had to say, and I put a lot of stock in what he had to say about the individual. And what your sister said is true. When you caught between a rock and a hard place, you change now and start saying, you know, hey, I did do it, and you didn't. I mean, how you going to live with yourself on that side of things? So my vote today is to grant your commutation sentence to 99 years with immediate parole eligibility.
Mr. Freeman? Mrs. Jackson?
Right. Mr. Stukes, I also struggled quite a bit with this case as I was reviewing it on paper. And I will say your interview left a lot to be desired. But you do have a good institutional record. You only had 6 disciplinary reports in 35 years. You have positive remarks from the staff, and you have a low static 99 score, which assesses risk for sex offenses. Because of those reasons, my vote today would be to grant a commutation, or recommend a commutation to 99 years with immediate parole eligibility.
Thank you, Mrs. Jackson. Mr. Roche?
This is Stokes. I've listened very intently. I read the scenario, the arrest reports, and malfeasance office, the sex offenses. This is not 1 or 2 or 3. This is multiple charges. And you say that you are innocent of all charges. And you may be. I respect and hold Warden Goodwin's remarks in high esteem. But today, you didn't do exactly what Warden Goodwin said you usually do. You're honest, you have a good disciplinary record, you tell a complete truth all the time. Today, you had a very terrible interview. You were argumentative. You didn't answer the questions posed to you by Bell. I'm struggling, but when someone refuses to answer questions that's posed to him, and you have law enforcement opposition, and you are very argumentative today, it leads me to believe that you are hiding something and you didn't want to reveal that information at this interview. And I had the same opinion that Mr. Marabella had, that some of this, or some of these allegations hold some truth, and you don't want to let go of that truth. So based on the interview in which you had today, and the way you handled the interview, I'm going to deny your request.
All right, Mr. Stukes. You've been through this process before many times. You know how it works. You received 2 favorable votes, 2 that were to deny your application. I'll say this, for me, although you know what the outcome is, because it takes 4 votes. You understand that?
Yes.
My vote, as Mr. Marabella said, I listened very carefully to the interview. I don't think you did a really good job, but I listened more intently to the things that Warden Goodwin had to say. And he spoke for you stronger than probably I've heard him speak for anyone. He says you're a model prisoner, a good citizen within your community. My vote today, although it doesn't matter, based on Warden Goodwin's remarks, my vote would be to commute your sentence to 99 years with immediate parole eligibility. However, since you did not receive the required 4 favorable votes, your application for clemency has been denied today, sir.
Thank you.
Wow. Okay, let's unpack this. And thank you, Richard. We do have documents to unpack this with. Let's first just take a step back and think that what he's doing is he is insisting that all these years later, his children made it up or were coached into making it up because he was going through a divorce with his wife, and she so badly wanted to get back at him that these claims were made. Not 1, not 2, but I believe 3 claims. Forget about what he did as a police officer. We're just talking about his children and his, if you want to throw in the loop there, his wife's sister. Now, the wife-sister thing, sure, if the wife was so angry at him, that's an easier thing to make up. But the kids, and I think it was Mr. O'Shea that touched on this, and forgive me for not clearly remembering, I watched this hearing, then I paused it, went away for an hour and a half, and then researched the facts, and then came back to do this, finish this unpacking. But the idea that his son says that he forgives him, but he's still sticking that it happened, and that still to this day he's calling his son a liar. What has to be claimed here then is that the child was brainwashed. And I don't see anywhere that his daughter said that. So you're saying that his son and his daughter made it up. And like Mr. Mirabella said, he showed no kind of remorse but it can work both ways. If you saw that, you might just think that he was being manipulative, or you could say, well, he was resentful against his. But let's unpack this. Also, another thing, he like Mr. Mirabella said, he didn't admit to the 2 malfeasance charges, and it's why didn't you just admit that? It's not a big deal. And not admitting that, it's so he can't do anything wrong. He was completely innocent of everything, and it's almost saying something about his inability to just admit fault, in my opinion. It's you can admit the malfeasance charge and deny this charge, but you deny both. Anyway, so he elected a non-jury trial, and he took a judge-only trial, and he was found guilty. Why you do a non-jury trial in this situation, I'm not quite sure, but he did. And here it was. August 23rd, 1987, the defendant's 4-year-old daughter told a babysitter that her father had touched her genital area. The babysitter had been instructed by the child's mother to clean the child. So there you might throw in, oh, so the mother told the babysitter to do it. Maybe the mother set it up. You can say, okay, here's how that's possible. As the sitter was wiping the child's genital area with a small towel, the child cried and said that the sitter was hurting her. When the babysitter asked if anyone had touched her there, the child replied, "Yes, my daddy." So now what you're doing is you're assuming that the mother purposely hurt her or had someone hurt her and then coached her to say that it was her dad, a 4-year-old. The sitter then informed the child's older brother and sister and later child's aunt. The child's maternal grandmother, with whom the child's mother had been living at the time, took the child to the hospital, which referred her to Charity Hospital. Charity Hospital notified the police. Now, something I want to point out here is they didn't call the police right away. They took her to the hospital. I'm just saying one might think that if the whole plot was to get him, maybe they would have first brought her to, or called the police or called a social worker before they took her to 2 hospitals, before one of the hospitals called the police, not them. At Charity, the child was examined by Dr. Andrew Meyer, and he testified that there was multiple hymenal. I'm sorry, I'm not pronouncing that right. I know what tear is located at the 3 to 9 o'clock position of the hymen, consistent with penile penetration. He also noted scratches on the victim's legs when she stated that were accidentally caused by her brother. Dr. Meyer testified that the victim told him that she had had vaginal intercourse with her father just the night before, and that she had demonstrated her father's actions with anatomically correct dolls, placing, they performed the standard kit that they do for these things. However, the trial judge did not allow the kit to be opened in court due to insufficient and inaccurate identification markings. So, that can be as simple as someone who made the kit putting the wrong date on it, or the wrong name on it. Human error versus any type of scientific error. Detective Thomas Harrington was notified of the incident in question. Upon arriving at the Charity Hospital, Detective Harrington spoke to the victim's brother, sister, grandmother, and the doctor. And from that, an arrest warrant was made for the defendant. The detective then interviewed the brother and the sister, while the defendant waited in the back room out of the sight of the children. At trial, the victim testified in her own words that her father had, now she's at trial. She's testifying. She's maybe 5 years old by now, and she stuck with it. And that her brother and sister were at school when it happened, which is questionable. The victim's testimony was remarkably consistent throughout, despite the fact that she was only 2 days past her 5th birthday on the day of the trial. And they confirmed that they were separated and that she had stayed with her father several days prior to the incident of the babysitter. He testified in his own defense. So he gets up there and testifies that he's never did anything to his children, that it was in an attempt to explain the results of his daughter's physical exam. The defendant testified that his daughter sometimes rode the crossbar of her brother's bicycle and that he once punished his son for gyrating around the victim. So he blames a bicycle and his son. He further testified that during visitation, he was never alone with the victim, but the older children were always present. The defendant also implied that the charges against him were the result of the hostility of his wife and her family stemming from their marital problems. He stated that his wife had a bad habit, and infidelity led to their separation, which in turn led to hostility. On rebuttal, the victim's 10-year-old older brother, so this is the brother that forgave him, testified that his father and the defendant had attempted anal intercourse with him several years earlier. The brother testified that his father told me that it was our secret. I mean, what you're saying here is that a 10-year-old brother, a 4-year-old sister, they all colluded or were brainwashed to get on the stand. And all these years later, the 10-year-old brother doesn't say he made it up, even though his mother's passed away. In theory, you might say he could have said he made it up, but he didn't. He just said he forgived him. And the daughter, I don't think we have any testimony from her. It's just not believable. He's just in denial, in my opinion. And the idea that he has a perfect record in prison, and sorry to say this, it only reaffirms my belief that he's guilty, because roaches, people who do this to their children, they always have perfect records. 99.9% of the time, their records are immaculate. And the idea that the warden, who most of us adore, he's just seems like really a stand-up guy, that he gave maybe he never saw the court transcripts and he just believes him. But, and spending years and years and years with someone who does everything right, but that warden did give. I've only seen, I think, him do that one other time. And it was a few years after this case. And he appealed the verdict. They bring up different cases. Here's the exact line of questioning that they gave the 4-year-old. Did you tell your mommy what you were going to say? Uh-huh. I said I was going to say everything. You said you were going to say everything? Uh-huh. So that's everything. Did she tell you what to say? Uh-uh. Did she say, Sheena, be sure to say so and so? Shakes head. What did she tell you be sure to say? She said, be sure to tell the truth. Okay. Did she tell you to be sure to say that your daddy did a bad thing to you? Uh-huh. Uh-huh. She told you that? Uh-huh. So, someone can argue, okay, well, this past statement means that she was coached, right? It appeared, but this is part of his appeal, remember? This is his appeal saying, hey, this is proof that she lied. It appears that the victim telling the truth, including saying her daddy did a bad thing, the words your daddy did a bad thing, were supplied by the defense counsel alone. As the defendants, or that the defense counsel planted those words. As the defendant's contention, this prosecution is the result of disgruntled relatives. A trial judge noted that the first concern of the child's grandmother and aunt was for the child. It did not involve the police, but simply brought the child to the hospital. In fact, it was the authorities at the charity hospital that called the police. So that's what I said. The trial judge was impressed with the testimony credibility of the defendant's son, who is 10 years old. And then finally, the testimony of other state witnesses was consistent with that of the victim, as in the doctors and whatnot. There was no error in the trial courts. The victim was competent to testify. There we find merit, and the defendant's claim was competent. And they held it in. And then here's something. Now, if you want to say, I mean, again, what you would have, I think all of the facts are again in the meat of it. The crux of it is that the 10-year-old still doesn't take it back. And did I miss it? But the daughter, did we have a statement from her? I don't know. Gosh, I should. It is a big deal, but a very big deal what she would say. But maybe I don't think she forgave him. It was only the son. I mean, you're gonna have to be calling them either way. You're liars. Or somehow brainwashed to that extent. And also blows my mind, his sister, who is a doctor in sociology, she's, and good for her. She just needed to understand people, and she, like, it bothered her so much, and she went and got this degree, but it also befuddles me how you can have this degree in sociology, and she makes the statements, well, you would do this throughout your entire life. You didn't do it to your siblings. And she makes a good point there. But also, I think that, maybe there are exemptions. Maybe he didn't start doing it till, it's hard to know. But also that she doesn't, what she would be stating is that her nephews and nieces and mother were all lying, or all brainwashed. A billboard catches. Okay, so this was written in 2015. And it's actually written quite well, and it's about their experience at his commutation hearing that took place before they were doing this on YouTube in January of 2015. So they went to it in person. And they were en route to the first state pardon hearing for a convicted child, a former 13-year veteran. So this was the first state ever commutation hearing for such a case. And this is only when he had served 27 years. So it's going to be interesting to read this and get their insight of the case, right? And there is some tragedy in here, which is because I did read it already. As a reporter of Louisiana Weekly, this column has covered Stukes. The columns also covered the trial and the aftermath that resulted in the dismissal of NOPD Stukes admitted torturing handcuffs a motorist. Wow. So this was a dismissal of his case where he torturing a handcuffed motorist with an electric stun gun. That's what Mr. Mabel alluded to. Today, he continues to deny ever doing anything to his children. From a hearing in the room department, headquarters of Baton Rouge, board member Henry Tink Powell grilled Stukes via a live teleconference call to David Wade Correctional Center. We should FOIA this, right? Are you saying you did not commit the crime? I did not, Stukes said. Remember, this is 2015. You said what your daughter said was not true? Not true, he repeats. What about your son? Hubert says. At the 1987 trial, its 12-year-old son, and the other report said 10, so maybe he was mistaken, testified that his father attempted to sodomize him years earlier as a younger boy, telling him to keep it a secret. He laughs dismissively. I was never hardly home. Well, you don't need to ever hardly be home to do that, dude. Throughout the hearing, Stukes depicts himself as a hardworking police officer, toiling the long hours to support his family. He blames his ex-wife, who allegedly had a bad habit of narcotics and turning her children against him. And he said, no good deed goes unpunished. Board member Powell notes Stukes had taken the prison's programs, but he doesn't attempt to explain why he enrolled in the programs. And the apparent contradiction with his denials of doing that to his kids. Rather, he emphasizes his remarkable skill set. I have some carpentry skills, electronic skills, and he addresses, and then Jerry Goodwin addressed the pardon board on his behalf. Oh, so here he's addressing him again. I've known him since 1988. He's a model prisoner. I can't say anything bad about him. Here he was housed in protective unit. The courtroom was closed. Now they're talking about the actual court hearing because they attended that too. The courtroom was closed to the press during the children's testimony. They were seated in an afternoon of the court as the judge read the verdict to their father. As the judge spoke, I wrote the children's chorus of Silent Night was clearly audible. I don't know what that means. As the judge spoke, I wrote the children's chorus of the Silent Night was clearly audible. I don't know what that means. Courtroom spectators wept. Others were visibly shaken. Judge Canizaro told Stukes, the state has removed all reasonable doubt about you being guilty. Stukes was sentenced to life without the probation of parole or suspension of sentence. It was a 3-judge panel. The Fourth Circuit Court, a 3-judge panel rejected his appeals, including that the claims that the girl had been coached. Remarkably indirect and inconsistent. Today, his children are all adults. The son and daughter he allegedly victimized didn't attend the hearing. They said they didn't oppose their father's bid of freedom. Oh, here they both said they didn't oppose it. According to statements, the pardon board, Cheryl Renazza, she was still there. Wow. In 2015. I mean, she must be the longest serving member currently. A second Stukes daughter wept before the board as she begged for his freedom. My father is innocent. This daughter, whose family lives in Texas, says she wants her father to be free to enjoy his grandchildren. That is just so disturbing. That sentence. I mean, what you're saying there again is that your siblings lied. You don't believe any of it, and that he should enjoy. At 12:15 p.m., the pardon board announces it was briefly. Well, obviously, if she believes he's innocent, that's why she'll say it. But I don't think she realizes how that statement just wouldn't help. At 12:15, the pardon board announced it will briefly leave for executive session. 5 minutes later, they returned. We do have a letter in opposition from the district attorney in New Orleans Parish. We've heard that, right? The district attorney doesn't speak. They just have a letter. And they denied 4-1. Insufficient time served and serious nature of the crime. My vote today would have been to give you a chance, says Cheryl Anatza, the lone dissenter. Oh, good old Cheryl. And she voted again to grant him, right? There was no error in the trial court's finding that the victim was competent to testify before. Experts say that abused children often struggle with anger, substance abuse, and other symptoms as adults. And sure enough, in 2006, a judge sentenced his son to 10 years in prison following the conviction of shooting 2 men outside a bar. And we could see if we can find his parole hearing, actually, because he would have had one, but it would have been before we were doing these, before they were on YouTube. The shooting left a man quadriplegic. Oh my gosh. Prior to sentencing, an uncle of Stukes disclosed that he had been molested at age 5. So to get some mercy from the judge, that's what they told the judge. The trial judge said child abuse doesn't justify an adult's vicious, unprovoked attack with a gun. A pre-sentencing report showed young Stukes had a history of violent behavior, including 5 arrests for battery. He once hit his wife with a flashlight, shoved his grandfather to the floor when he tried to intervene. He appealed the sentence. How is 10 years for shooting 2 people, paralyzing them, excessive? It's like he's lucky. The boy once sang Silent Night with his little sister, whose testimony of an unspeakable family secret helped to rid New Orleans streets of a powerful, sadistic detective, left court as a victim and convicted violent felon. That was well written. But you tell me, I for one believe that he is entirely guilty, but it is remarkable to see how some people are just highly intelligent, educated people just can't accept it. But what do you think? And with that, I'll let you go.